Okay, I think that's about time. So, Sarah, do you wanna kick things off for us?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So, good afternoon, Manila. Good morning, UK. And to everyone else who's tuning in from a different time zone, welcome to our webinar, Post COVID Recovery Building a Distributed Team in the Philippines. Today, we've partnered with the British Chamber of Commerce. So, thank you for joining us, Chris, and British Chamber. I'll give a quick introduction on, I guess, why we're here. So, why are we here, right? Coronavirus, I guess I would call is the black swan of 2020. I don't think any of us saw this coming, and we've all had to very quickly react, and everyone's been impacted in one way or another. And we're all looking for ways to protect our families, protect our health, and protect our businesses. So KMC has helped companies keep operations going by augmenting their staff and hiring here. And the Philippines presents unique opportunities for companies in the UK looking to sustain their operations because they're able to tap into a new talent pool and benefit from a lot of cost savings while doing so. And so that's helped them get on the road to recovery. Today, we're going to be sharing a little bit about that, how people are using remote teams. We're going to hear a lot from Chris Nelson. I'd like to actually just quickly introduce him. So our first speaker today is Chris Nelson. He's Executive Director and Trustee of the British Chamber of Commerce. He's also the Director of the Philippine National Bank and Chairman of the Trust Committee, just to rattle off a few impressive things that he does. He'll be speaking with us today about the status of UK and Philippine businesses and trade and Brexit effects to the Philippines. And then I'll just quickly introduce Tom while I'm still talking. We have Tom Cragg. He's KMC's Vice President for Sales. He's been in the Philippine outsourcing industry for over 14 years. He's been with KMC for 9 years and going, and he's been a part of the incredible growth story that KMC has had over the last decade plus. And so he's got some great stories to share, and he's been on the front lines with the rest of the executive team helping KMC and other businesses that we support adapt quickly and get survive this. So without further ado, I'd like to hand this over to Chris Nelson.
Okay, where am I here? So thank you very much, Sarah. I hope people can see the slides. So good morning. I'm actually in London. So for people in London, good morning. For the Philippines, good afternoon. I hope everybody can hear me clearly. And first of all, thanks to Sarah, Tom, and KMC for this opportunity. So if we can move, I'm going to take you through the UK side in terms of both Brexit, trade, and also linking it to important developments in the Philippines. So very quickly for those, here is the timeline. It's quite a busy chart, but if I can just highlight a couple of key points. Next month will be 4 years since the UK voted to leave the EU on the 23rd of June, 2016. And there has been many different aspects, but finally we are actually we'll be leaving on the 31st of January of 2021, and obviously there are still a lot to be finalized, and that's also obviously complicated now by the impact of COVID-19. Next slide, please. So the British Chamber of Commerce has a key role in trying to develop UK and Philippine business. And the Philippines has been hit by 3 elements this year, which is impacting its growth. The first was the Taal volcano, which for those of you who are there, we seem to have forgotten about, but actually happened, I believe, at the beginning of February, and that caused disruption initially. Then we had a decline in Chinese tourists. Obviously, that was the start of the Wuhan outbreak. And of course, the much bigger impact, which obviously has been the imposition of community quarantines, enhanced community quarantines, which has really had a major impact on business within the Luzon zone. And I will give some points as we move forward. Next slide, please. So here's the Philippine status in terms of how they operate. The domestic product declined by about 0.2%. To be honest with you, that actually is understated because, of course, the major impacts will be felt as we go through into the next ensuing quarters. What I would say is that the Philippines is well, particularly obviously in terms of its talent pool of people and its infrastructure program. And I'll come to the final slide when you see it. I think there is very important programs that the Philippine government is looking at, which will look to restart or regenerate this growth. Just to put into context, the Philippines was growing at approximately 6% prior to obviously these impacts. Next, please. Next slide, please. So what's the status of UK business? Well, the UK has been on a lockdown or restrictions since the 23rd of May. And now there've been some slight loosening of those restrictions, but clearly it's had a major impact, obviously, in the hospitality business. And it's also had a major impact, of course, in terms of offices. That's an area, obviously, where KMC clearly operates, but you have companies now looking at what are their options as they're allowed to move forward. So, for an example, for those of the UK, a major financial area now is Canary Wharf in London. Companies now looking how they're going to be staffing those offices, how many will be working from home. But there is a pressure here to get more people back to work. And although they keep saying it's not business as normal, there is definitely a growing pressure. Just to let you know, finally, manufacturing and construction have all resumed as of the 13th of May. Next slide, please. So the Prime Minister gave a roadmap of how the UK plans to come out of its lockdown. And this was one of the things I'm just showing you here was that this currently is probably based on England. There is differences because we have what we call devolved governments in both Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and they're all operating at different paces at the moment, which is causing some issues. However, saying that, the UK, or basically England, was looking at the fact that coming 1st of June, i.e. the beginning of next month, non-essential shops would be allowed to open, a lot more businesses would be back, and that coming in July, earliest 4th of July, you'll be able to see maybe some hotels, restaurants, and bars, possibly, but no definitive statement. Today, they got newspaper reports saying there is a growing pressure to actually accelerate that. Whether that will occur, we'll have to see. As I'm pleased to say, apparently, certainly the rate of infection, thankfully, in London in particular, has gone down substantially. And I believe the last 2 days, although I've not seen the recent report, there was actually no new cases. So it's beginning to build up, but that is the indicative roadmap. And I think the other devolved states will be looking at their own roadmaps, but there is a growing desire to get the UK back to work, and that hopefully will begin in most earnest in about June, and then obviously followed onwards. Next slide, please. Just for those interested, this is actually the trade relationship between the Philippines and the UK. For the Philippines, it's primarily agricultural products, though they're looking obviously to see how that can work. So you have basically tuna, pineapple, and coconut. In terms of the UK, it's basically been aerospace. Obviously, that could be challenged. Technology, automotives, and consumer goods. The retail sector has been particularly promising for the Philippines. Let's not forget, the Philippines is 109 million population. It's been growing in terms of its disposable income, and therefore is obviously an attractive consumer market. It's a consumer-driven market. The other thing which I would say, and this is without getting too technical, the UK and the Philippines currently trades under an EU agreement called the GSP Plus, which is a general system of preferences. With the UK's exit out of the EU, which is the end of the 31st of January, obviously that's going to come under some discussion, how they'll operate. Without a definitive decision yet, most likely there'll be a transition period, but the UK is already beginning to look at tariffs, which obviously will have an impact on countries trading with it across the world. Next slide, please. Yeah, so if you look at this, we talk about actually our foreign direct investment into the Philippines is about 0.7% of the total foreign direct investments. Clearly, that's not the largest. There are opportunities to grow that. And when I come to my last slide, I'd emphasize a couple of points. There are certain restrictions on foreign direct investment into the Philippines, which is covered under the Constitution. However, there have been moves to ease those direct foreign investment restrictions. And I think that trend and momentum will continue. The tourist market, which of course, unfortunately will be impacted, has been growing between the two countries. And of course, Philippine workers, and that was mentioned, have played a key role. Philippine workers in the healthcare sector of the UK have gained obviously a lot of prominence, and sadly, a number have actually passed away. And their courage and efforts have been recognized by all, and they represent a key element of the UK workforce and prominently in the healthcare sector. So thanks to all those frontliners. Next, please. So here you have a picture of Parliament with, of course, the flags of the EU. And during this COVID, obviously, pandemic, which has impacted countries across the world, there was a move to actually halt or delay the Brexit discussions and therefore move the date of Brexit beyond the 31st of January 2021. That was actually rejected, so it's actually going to be on the 2021. The government has just announced what they call a common tariff regime, which will mean some reductions, but the still key discussions with the EU has not been finalized. And for everybody who knows this, the EU is the major trading partner with the UK, and that will be critical for many companies. And there's still a lot to be decided in obviously the next period, which is approximately 6 months. Next, please. So I should just say that the Philippines and the UK enjoys a very good relationship. It's been growing and developing through various efforts. In the picture you see here on your right side, if you can see it, is actually the Secretary of Trade and Investment. His name is Mr. Mon Lopez, and he's with an MP from the UK, Richard Davis, who comes here. And Richard is the Prime Minister's ambassador or delegate, trade delegate, I should say, not ambassador, for some countries in Southeast Asia, and in particular for, he does a lot of focus in the Philippines. Richard Graham, I beg your pardon, is his name. And he is particularly keen on the Philippines because he used to live in the Philippines and therefore has great affection. The trade, our negotiations, our work with the Philippines is that they would like to continue this momentum. And I should just add also, the Philippines has also been investing back into the UK. So there's been instances of the Philippine companies buying into the UK market and investing. Andrew Tan's company actually bought into White and Mackay, a whiskey company. So the relationship is growing, and the desire is that whatever happens in terms of negotiations, this will continue. Next slide, please. So again, I'll be very brief on this one. While the UK has announced this general tariff regime of what it's trying to look at, and this will bring obviously some reductions, it's still not specific, and there is a lot to be discussed in terms of other areas, and one of the key ones, of course, will be VAT. Next, please. The Philippines is also very important, I would argue, for any company looking, because also ASEAN as a whole has been a great area in terms of developing business. It's very key for the UK. Obviously, it does very well, the UK in certain countries like Singapore, Malaysia, but the Philippines can play a very strategic role within ASEAN. And although ASEAN, of course, is being impacted, but like everywhere, of course, because of COVID, it is a very growing sector. I believe ASEAN represents a total market of about 600 million people. And I think for anybody looking to do business, the Philippines is a good entry point. And I think that's how it's looking to obviously position itself. And I think while we're in this downturn at the moment, obviously impact, going forward, the prospects for ASEAN and for UK companies, and you can see our direct investment there, is very positive. Next, please. Next slide, please. Do we have another? There we go. This is my final slide, and this is very linked to the Philippines, but I think it's very important for everybody who's listening in today. The first is, in the Philippine Congress, under discussion is an economic stimulus bill. For those of you following worldwide developments, every government has to do a stimulus bill. The US is obviously putting trillions of dollars to work. The UK has obviously got its furlough schemes. It's extending support to governments. The Philippines also has to look at that. This is a very critical bill. I'm anticipating that it may even be signed off first week of June. And that will have a great impact, I believe, on supporting key sectors which have been very significantly hit, of course, aviation, tourism. But the impact across the whole economy will be very important and will move it forward, along with obviously its projects. The other element is obviously certain, but it's now looking to reduce corporate tax. So for companies planning to get into the Philippines, currently your corporate tax is 30%, and they're looking to reduce that to 25%, and that is now being decided will be done in one move. Finally, there's also discussions, there is a need, of course, to increase direct foreign investment, and I think linked to that is a discussion on how they can then obviously reduce or remove some of those restrictions on investment. Those 3 points will certainly help the Philippine economy, plus also will help in terms of, along with their build, which is all their infrastructure projects. So in conclusion, I would add this: the Philippines and the UK has a very strong relationship. It's growing very strongly. I think there's great opportunities still, and definitely in the long-term future. Finally, I'd just like to say thank you for listening. And of course, the British Chamber is happy to support any company that's looking at it. And thanks again to KMC for this opportunity. And I let you, I think I hand back now to you, Sarah. Is that correct?
To me, actually, Chris. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. It's all right, mate. Yeah, I know Chris very well. I worked for 3 to 4 years on the British Chamber alongside him, and very much a mentor, one of my mentors here. And I know he's a huge fountain of knowledge on sort of both sides of the pond, as it were. So there is going to be a quick Q&A session at the end. So hopefully we'll have about 10-15 minutes at the end. So please do start typing in some questions for any of us today. But without further ado, we'll keep going. I just wanted to sort of introduce you back to Sarah as well. So I cherry-picked Sarah to lead our business development efforts around the remote teams or distributed teams side of our business. And she's been absolutely fundamental, actually, in engaging some really key accounts for us at the moment. And one of those is actually the platform we're using this morning, which is Zoom. So I won't spoil the surprise, Sarah. I know you have a case study coming up, so I'll let you talk a little bit more about that. So KMC, yeah, the who and the where. So I'll start with the where. We are the largest flexible office space provider here in the Philippines. For those on the call this morning that work in square foot as opposed to square meters, just to put that into perspective, we currently manage just shy of 1 million square foot of plug and play office space here in the Philippines. We're across 10 different CBDs, most in Metro Manila, of course, but we also have some provincial locations like Clark, Iloilo, Cebu. And ever since I joined the company, and one of the big appeals about joining KMC was the fact it was never just space. It was always value add for our clients. And I guess the most relevant part of that for the participants this morning, hopefully, is the KMC Teams component. So we provide HR and payroll services to our clients. We provide staffing solutions, and we've grown significantly in that area in the past 12, 24 months. And we currently hire 1,600 employees, the majority of which are actually on behalf of offshore companies, like hopefully like some of yourselves this morning. So I wanted to just give you a quick, and Chris made a start. So just a quick snapshot of sort of where we are here at the Philippines at the moment. Of course, different guidelines and regulations in different countries. So we've been under some form of lockdown. It seems like we're living our lives by acronyms at the moment. So we were put under ECQ, or Enhanced Community Quarantine, back in March 15, so just over 2 months ago. And we've been in various sort of versions of that, now under modified ECQ, which means that workforce is starting to make its way back into the office. We're back to sort of 50% at the moment. But just going back a couple of months, when the lockdown was first initiated, and actually of the developing countries, the Philippines was one of the first to react. So kudos to the government for that. But we were given quite strict timelines, and restrictions were increased on a daily basis. And given our footprint and the number of members we have, we really had to think fast. We were very fortunate to be, I guess all of our decision making is made on a local basis in the Philippines. We're very much a domestic company here, and yeah, so we had to think on our feet, move quickly, and really enable our clients, our workforce, our members to be able to continue to work from the home environment. So I guess what that really meant was, thousands and thousands of deployments in terms of IT hardware in very, very challenging timeframes. We wanted to do a quick poll with you, so we want to keep this interactive. I mentioned the Q&A at the end. We'll spend about 15-20 seconds on this with a bit of luck, so everybody get ready. We just want to ask everyone, potentially why you're on the call today, but what's the biggest problem your company faces? So we'll get the poll up. So just to run through the answers, we've got loss of revenue, inability to retain domestic talent, growth and innovation projects being put on hold, decrease in access to capital funding, obviously employee health and safety being paramount importance more than ever at the moment, and uncertainty. And I accept uncertainty is a little vague, so perhaps we'll sort of narrow it down to uncertainty around like when are things going to get back to some level of normality. So hopefully you've all had a chance to click on one, and we'll give you another few seconds. Okay, that should do it. So let's just have a quick look at the answers. Here we go. So, okay, loss of revenue and uncertainty. Okay, that came up. We did a similar poll, and it was actually uncertainty last time, but interesting to see loss of revenues being particularly flagged there. So hopefully a very, very relevant discussion coming up. Okay, let's move on. So yeah, so loss of revenue, I guess. Like how is the Philippines, your solution to recovery, your launchpad sort of getting back on track. And here's the sort of heat map, if you like, in terms of where KMC are across that archipelago. There's over 7,000 islands here. You can see there's the majority of our desks or seats are in Metro Manila, of course, but a good chunk in Cebu, and you can see the Clark and Iloilo locations. So well distributed. So I think if Sarah and I have done our job properly today, the biggest takeaway that everybody on this call will have from this webinar is really the investment of people here in the Philippines, the talent. As you can see, 700,000 plus graduates like churning out of these universities every year. And since I've been here, like really encouraging to see that the majority or a much bigger portion of those employees now are doing more IT and engineering. Again, with all of the automation going on, as you can imagine in the Philippines, some of those lower skilled roles are being replaced. And because of that, companies, universities, they're really focusing on upskilling those employees and making them ready for what comes next. It's the third most improved global workforce, apparently, according to the Global Competitiveness Report. It really took me back almost 15 years ago now, when I first arrived walking around Metro Manila. It looked like just about everybody I came across was in a sort of working age bracket. It's almost the sort of perfect population triangle, and very tech savvy, of course. A lot of millennials on these workforces. Things have got a lot easier, I must say, in the time I've been here. And actually, last year we rose 37 notches on the Global Ease of Doing Business Index. I guess the Philippines is best known, I suppose, other than Boracay and our beaches, for being one of the largest IT BPO hubs in the world, alongside India. So we're top two, and very much the number one for voice. And why is that? Well, goes without saying, the English proficiency here is exceptional. We're ranked 20 in the world, and we've actually just shown you some of our neighboring countries, Malaysia, India, Vietnam, so you can see how we're comparing to some other offshoring destinations in that respect. Yeah, always a fascinating statistic for me. Still hasn't quite sunk in, but yeah, the Philippines, believe it or not, is actually the third largest English-speaking country in the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about the GDP, and I won't do this justice in the same way that Chris did, but you can see there, despite some fall off in Q1 2020, in 2019 we were actually growing 6.7%. And just to break down some of that GDP in terms of the contributions, 48 billion of that comes from the IT BPO industry. And it's actually just, they were actually anticipating that this year, I believe, if not last year. Anyway, I think this year it will overtake the number one slot, which was actually contributions or remittances being made by overseas Filipino workers. So again, the top two sectors, it's all about talent, it's all about workforce, whether they're here in the Philippines or overseas. Again, talent. Touching on the cost savings, and again, maybe this is particularly relevant given the responses to our poll earlier. But we're always very confident that we'll achieve somewhere in the region of about 70% savings in terms of labor arbitrage versus places like the UK and Singapore and Sydney, for example. I've included here a couple of sort of, I guess, more traditional roles. Customer service, I mentioned voice earlier, but there's also obviously like chat support and some of those other functions. Data entry, so populating databases, analyzing that data, and just encoding, placing orders. Still very popular, of course, here in the Philippines. But I think more interestingly on the next slide, again, going back to some more of those, I guess more technical or more senior functions, and we've done some comparisons here for you versus Singapore and the UK again for digital marketing staff, and full stack developers. I always I think clients are particularly surprised in a good way when we talk about very, very technical roles like programmers, web developers, full stack, you name it. That's where we actually tend to see the savings creeping towards 80% for some of those very, very technical roles. So yes, I think next slide. Great. So I'm sure that there's some other models out there, but we've really broken it down into three. And as Chris quite rightly said, you know, the British Chamber, they've got a lot of business services where they're really here to give you impartial advice on what's going to work for your company. So we'll obviously save the best to last. But the options, and again, if you don't have a lot of you know, bandwidth at the moment to come in and manage the staff, you know, outsourcing to a third-party BPO could be a good route. We typically hear a lot, or some of the clients looking at KMC are somewhat vocal sometimes about you know, the lack of control that they've experienced in terms of like the selection of candidates and the everyday output of the staff. I guess the other extreme is incorporating a company here in the Philippines. As you can see, takes a while, 6 to 12 months. You're obviously taking on all of that corporate housekeeping, compliance around taxes in a foreign land. It's a lot to navigate, and obviously taking on all of the HR management and payroll, office fit out, preventative maintenance, you name it, it's all on you. And sort of KMC is sort of somewhere in the middle. We hire the staff on your behalf, so we get your job descriptions, go out, source, screen, onboard the talent that you're looking for, but you still have the final say in terms of who we select, and even how much you decide to pay them. And again, KMC is really there to sort of relieve that headache around navigating, you know, labor codes in a foreign land. At which point I think I'm handing over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Tom. Good lead up. So how can a KMC distributed team help, right? We know that the Philippines, you know, from Tom, we know that the Philippines has been in the outsourcing industry for over 25 years. We know they have excellent talent. As Tom said, we're #1 in voice. Filipinos are very in tune with Western culture. They have a neutral accent when speaking English, and this makes it very easy to do business for and with Western nations. But the Philippines is much more than just a call center and customer support destination. And I think it's great that the rest of the world is recognizing this. Companies are now looking to the Philippines to set up innovation hubs to build out tech products. They're choosing the Philippines to set up their Southeast Asian presence. Companies are also expanding their marketing functions or building their finance teams here or accounting. They're building shared support services out here. We've seen it all. And I mean, for offshore companies, there's an incredible opportunity to tap into this new region and these new talent pools. And it doesn't hurt that, you know, you save money while doing it, and you don't suffer on quality either. So that's great. If you look at the graphs here, and these are just figures for 2020, we've hired 342 people underneath our staffing model during the pandemic. So it's clear that there's a need and that it's being filled here in the Philippines. And it's, like I said, it's during COVID. It wasn't without its challenges, and it hasn't been easy. We've needed to adapt and revisit the way that we previously did things. But KMC, I guess one of their unofficial core values is flexibility, and that's been crucial at times like this. And so we've been able to adapt and get, you know, all of these roles hired for all these different companies. If you look at the graph on the right, customer service is a small piece of the pie, like I mentioned. You know, you have a lot of data and research being done here, finance, marketing functions. So that's fantastic to see. So we've been able to fulfill these roles and support businesses for so many reasons, right? KMC has an excellent reputation as an employer, and we provide, you know, through the staffing model and through the companies that we're privileged to work with, we provide interesting opportunities for Filipinos to work for an offshore company or an international company while being able to stay onshore with their families. So they have that international experience, but they don't have to leave. And yes, if you if you know anything about Filipinos, we are very family oriented. And so that's huge. We're also backed, and KMC itself is backed by a huge talent acquisition team. It's very dedicated, very talented, and very good at what they do, right? And they're specialized into technical and non-technical roles. That's actually Monica, one of our technical acquisition specialists here at KMC. If you look at the funnel, if you look at the little graph, the funnel here, this is the way that we help find customized or build a customized team for you. So our talent acquisition team, they do a calibration and they understand what it is that you're looking for. The nice to haves, the need to haves, that, you know, all of that. And they go out and they do all of the legwork. And they bring back candidates that they think you're going to like. They think this is, you're gonna wanna add these people to your team. And ultimately you have the final say. If you look towards the bottom of the funnel, it says, you know, in the selection bucket, you know, client has the bigger function there. And that's because we are matching, we want you to know who you're hiring and build that relationship. So, and you also get to, the idea is that you drive their performance, you manage their day-to-day functions. I mean, we don't pretend to know more about your business than you do, but we do know what we do know. And we do what we do best, which is to manage the administrative functions and the facilities and all of that stuff in the Philippines that allow, you know, all of that stuff in the background to allow you to just focus on driving results. So we support your payroll and your HR functions through some really fantastic digital tools. Sprout is the HRIS system used by KMC. We use this for payroll, time, absence management, leave filing, all things like that. Sprout was actually developed in-house underneath KMC in the Philippines for the Philippines. But Sprout doesn't only track payroll and HR functions, and it's not only a document repository, but it also has a very rich insights tool that clients can leverage to make smarter decisions about their business. The other digital onboarding tool that we have is for onboarding. So we wanted to streamline, automate, but also improve the onboarding process. It can often be transactional and not very humanistic. And so we brought in this tool to help out with that. And this tool or this software also allows managers in the UK to connect directly with people in the Philippines. And the tool works across a number of different integrated channels, email, SMS, things like that. And so it's very interesting. Managers in the UK can send a welcome video to new hires. We can send birthday cards. We can send cakes, all sorts of good things.
I like the cakes. Anyway, I'm still waiting for mine, Sarah. So yeah, obviously, like as Sarah mentioned, we've had to keep going. Like our clients are still in growth mode, and we've had to figure out ways to successfully onboard those individuals and get them up and running, whether it be home-based initially. But again, now we're starting to see that trend of people coming back to the office. And just to touch on that very quickly, we've really had to sort of rewrite the standard operating procedure in that respect. So now you've got touchless access. You don't have to touch anything to access the space. It used to be fingerprint, now it's badge. We've got social distancing obviously covered, making sure that there's signs up reminding people to sort of stay a meter or two apart, and even some one-way routes around the office. But I think that the one thing that we've really grasped is the sanitation rather, and disinfection of these spaces. And we're actually using some hospital grade techniques, including like UV treatments and things like that, alongside other cleaning processes. We've always had registered nurses on sites for a number of reasons, but that's also particularly useful at the moment in terms of, you know, when people come in and do their self-declaration, they do have a nurse, or as we call it, nurseceptionist, that's on site to sort of give best advice in that regard. So just coming on to the next slide, and this is, my apologies, this is a little bit repetitive. So again, declarations, so contact tracing, marked pathways, making sure people are going in one direction, not brushing past each other. But I think what really stands out for me on this slide is the company shuttles. Transportation is still very, very, very slowly coming back in terms of public transportation. And therefore, a lot of companies have had to sort of grab the bull by the horns and take on some of this responsibility on behalf of their clients. And KMC's definitely working with some really good tech partners to make that a seamless process for our employees. But that said, not everybody is going to come back to the office. And I wanted to spend just a couple of slides talking about a new product that we're rolling out called Casa by KMC. What is Casa by KMC? It's really, I guess, bringing the office space experience to the employee's home. And like a lot of urbanized or heavily urbanized, dense Asian cities, real estate is an expensive commodity. And because of that, people don't always have, a spare room or nice furniture, that kind of stuff, like they might in the UK, for example. So some of the challenges, like I said, inadequate workspace, issues around IT hardware, the internet connection, and KMC are really trying to come up with this product that tackles all of these issues for the staff. One that's really been brought up, and again, the clients have been quite vocal about this, is that they're worried about this sort of lack of identity. They've worked hard while setting up their KMC team to make it really an extension of their London office. And they feel like, this work from home doesn't necessarily help them keep that sort of, company culture that they've worked so hard to drive. So KMC, we are KMC Casa rather, we're, sorry, next slide. We're really bringing that office space or office grade technology and bandwidth into the employee's home. But it's more than that. It's a blended model where, you might decide to keep, 75% of your staff in an office, simply because of the functions they were doing, handling sensitive data, that kind of thing. But you might take advantage of KMC Casa to keep some employees in their homes. Again, it sort of allows you to sort of tap into that, that bigger labor pool of individuals that might not want to commute, 1, 2, 3 hours to the office location, but they're very, very qualified for the role and can get it all done at home. And remain productive there with some support from KMC. So we're hoping with Casa, we've identified the issues and solved them. So we're bringing 50 Mbps of fiber broadband into the homes, providing the laptops, but also the furniture, ergonomic furniture. I after the last 2 weeks, myself included, I can feel the posture is starting to become a bit of a problem doing some of these calls slouched over the dining room table. So next slide, and very, very quickly. So better quality of life for the staff, less time in traffic, more time with family. Obviously, they still have that access. As I mentioned, it's a blended model. So if for whatever reason that 50 Mbps of internet went down, the ISP dropped out, they do have access to a KMC workspace. And the good thing about the model, and I'll talk about it a bit more on the next slide, we're near most people, so that people can really leverage that footprint and how we're spread out to access a KMC near them. I mentioned I won't talk anymore about the wider talent pool. I think we all understand that. It definitely derives a few more cost savings versus renting a desk with us. So it's a slightly more affordable solution. But it also adds a bit of BCP. I mean, if there was a spike, hopefully there won't be, but if there is a spike a couple of months down the road, at least they do already have a few employees working from home and already set up. So there should be some sort of continuity that can also be achieved from this product. Again, we talk hub and spoke is a terminology that's being thrown around a lot at the moment in the real estate world. So I think this sort of sums it up quite nicely. As I mentioned, KMC have the majority of their desks in the CBDs like Makati, BGC, and Ortigas, for those of you that are familiar with the Philippines. But we also have, very fortunately, in the last couple of years, we've focused a lot of the expansion in more fringe locations, on the outskirts, places like Quezon City, where the majority of the population actually stays. So we're very, very well positioned to offer this hub and spoke model to our clients and members. And just talking about some of our clients, so we included a few case studies, and we'll rattle these off because we're running out of time. So Moscud was really someone that sort of embraced that KMC footprint. They're sort of like the Amazon, if you like, for the shipping world. And they were tasked to develop additional sites and platforms for their clients in very, very tricky timeframes. And in order to get that talent in place and be able to move quickly enough, like the Philippines and KMC were chosen. So we currently hire about 20 staff on their behalf. Broad range of employees. We've got developers, programmers, some technical roles. We've got those technical roles, but also a lot of like customer support. And I think what's interesting with Moscud, I think that we'd sort of hit a roadblock in terms of tapping into talent in Manila, and then we opened it up to Cebu, where we also had another location. And again, Moscud have been able to leverage that other location and split their staff in two completely different islands. So again, there's that BCP component which they've embraced. The next case study we've got here is Inchcape, and back in the days when we could go out and meet our clients, take them for a beer and some pizza, we met Inchcape in Boat Quay in Singapore, and yeah, when we met them, there was clearly some concerns around retention of staff. They could find, although they were extremely expensive, they could find these employees, but after a couple of months, they constantly had, they were just exposed to these employees being poached. So every couple of months, they were trying to have to find somebody new for the position, and during that time, they could see the salary expectations rising. So KMC came in, we had a good chat over pizza. They said that they were going to start very small, and I think they gave us 3 roles. So we sent them a batch of like 6 candidates, and they ended up hiring for all, not all 6, but 5 of those initial batch. Very, very technical roles, as I mentioned. And they're now actually using us for not only their Singapore office, but also their Sydney office and their UK office. And they're up to about, I think it's actually more than 20 now, about 22 employees directly hired by KMC on their behalf. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Tom. Yep, so that brings us to Zoom. We're very fortunate to have Zoom as a client. We've enjoyed working with them, and it's been incredible seeing their growth, especially during this time. I think for a while they'd been thinking about setting up a presence in the Philippines, and they pulled the trigger with KMC earlier this year in January. We initially started out with a strong team, but just a team of 9 people. And to date, we've hired over 100 and growing. Every month, we've been smashing through our hiring targets. It's been good because to be able to support Zoom during this time, support their growth, but also to be able to support the people that maybe had lost jobs during this time. So it's been an interesting experience. We also started hiring all of these people right as, really getting into it, right as quarantine, we went under ECQ. And so we had to very, very quickly shift from people going to the office, being onboarded in the office, hired in the office, to remote onboarding, hiring, and a new work from home model. And so we had to procure laptops, headsets, monitors, entire IT new hire kits, and deliver these to the employee homes to be able to get them to work. And so we've been able to do that. Outside of helping build their team here, their talent here, we've been, like I said, help them with procurement, and we're also building them a customized future office for when everyone's ready to go back. All right, next. So a little bit about life at KMC. So I'm very proud to be part of KMC. Thank you, Tom, for bringing me in. We have a really incredible and supportive company culture, and core values are driven top down. Greg, the K in KMC, actually strongly believes in healthy living, healthy lifestyles, and that's evidenced by the many health and wellness activities that we have each month. But we also believe in well-rounded employees, and the marketing team monthly puts together events that give employees opportunities, or networking opportunities, learning and development opportunities as well. As you can imagine, this is all shifted online. And so we're able to access that through the KMC News Pod. There's new e-learning courses. We've also been reaching out to communities in the Philippines and outside of the Philippines through our different webinars. We've tried to take what we've learned during this time. I think everyone is learning daily, and we've tried to, drill that down into useful content and share it with everyone. Yeah, this is an impressive list of a lot of companies that we've been very fortunate to work with.
Obviously, we want to brag about some of these brands, but I think one of the reasons I was keen to keep this in was this last couple of months, it's been a lot of collaboration. So we've got sort of 450 clients. I think I've been on the phone with at least half, like well over 200 clients in terms of, studying best practices. What do they want to do? It's all very well for us to have a sort of recommendation at government level, but really working with all of these clients and sort of picking up a few, tips and best practices along the way. So I just wanted to just reiterate what a pleasure it's been to work with some of these guys. And I think we're about there, guys, which is not bad timing for us, Sarah. We can ramble on when we sometimes. So this is it. So I think obviously Chris is the wisest. So I'm hoping that most of these questions will go to him. But yeah, we can kick off the Q&A. So for anybody that hasn't had a chance to input their question, feel free to do so now, and we'll get through as many as we can. Before we actually start, I just wanted to check in, Chris. Like, obviously, some glorious weather you're having there in the UK at the moment. Is everybody sort of sticking to the rules and staying home, or are people out in mass?
Well, I hope you can hear me. They've changed the guideline now. So in the UK, it's stay alert. So you can go out as much as you want. You can exercise all day, right? So you don't need to stay at home. That's why I mentioned there's a difference between England and the devolved states. So are people keeping? Yes, I think people have kept the rules very well, actually. I think one of the key issues they're going to face, actually, is getting people to move back to work. Because obviously that's the next stage. So
actually,
I hope that
it's
answers
funny
the
you
question.
mentioned that. One of our clients, Okta, did a survey in their London office, and I think it was something like 30. Like they're anticipating only about 25 to 30% of the workforce actually wanting or desiring to sort of come back to the office on a regular basis. It'll be interesting to see a similar survey here, because our team, for example, even during this period, they've been finding excuses to go into the office and sort of see their colleagues, and I just wonder if the pressures are slightly different in this part of the world. But yeah, we've got one here. So correct me if I'm wrong. I think we've just got one question in the Q&A, and this is from Hermelito Kriya. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. In your CASA program, work at home, is real estate virtual assistance tasks included? Thanks. Yes. So it's again one of the big. I came out here and I did about 5 years with a medical transcription company, and that was great, great experience. But we weren't, we couldn't sort of tap into other industries. We were very, very focused and very niche in that respect, and KMC is not. So just to reiterate what Sarah was saying earlier, we are the experts. We have the wonderful employer branding, and we are the experts when it comes to attracting and retaining talent on your behalf. So whether it's a virtual assistant, whether it's a web developer, a programmer, it's irrelevant. Like the staff are still going to be managed by you, Hermelito. So you could essentially put whatever functions you want. Now, it doesn't happen very often, but there could be a certain role, Japanese speaker or something like that, tends to be around the languages where we don't feel comfortable, and we'll let you know right away and say, this isn't for us, or we'd advise you do this through one of our clients that are more niche potentially. Thank you, Hermelito. I got the thumbs up. Great. Chris Borjal. So, what's your turnaround time for a new hire from client calibration? Sarah, I'm going to let you answer this because you're in the trenches.
Thanks, Tom. From client calibration, we usually have a turnaround time of about 30 days for non-technical and 45 days for technical recruitment. That timeline can vary, right? We've hired, like I said, 100 people in 30 days. So, that's a quite a quick turnaround time, but 30 days is safe.
Yeah, I think just to add, believe it or not, despite some of the restrictions and some of the daily grinds in terms of actually like transportation for staff and things like that, there's never been a better opportunity in the Philippines. Sadly, there's a lot of good employees that have been displaced in the last couple of months, and if anything, our turnaround times around onboarding employees have actually increased, believe it or not, because this just seems to be, for once, this surplus of talent here in the Philippines. And same question. Sorry, from Chris as well. Chris Bojal. Do you also provide director level positions? Yes, absolutely. So again, just anything you like, but actually one thing I wanted to touch on was every now and again we have clients where they actually need to send a Brit or an Aussie to the Philippines to actually sort of coach the team initially. And we've provided them with special working permits. We've even got some, long-term expat employees under KMC's corporate umbrella. So yes, and obviously they don't have to be expats, but I just wanted to give that to just let you know that was an option. But yeah, director level, whatever you need, basically. Thank you, Chris. Let me just check the chat in case someone put something into there as well. There's one here, Chona Villanos.
Who is the KMC PIC we can contact for talent hiring?
You're speaking to her, Sarah. She would love your business.
We have a lot. Well, you can go to our website, to our careers page, and you can find all of the open roles that are there. careers@kmc.solutions. You can email them as well and that links to our entire recruitment team, and they'll address your inquiry. Or, as Tom said, you can also message me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can send me a message, and I'll be sure to forward in any CVs.
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, I know I'm rattling through, but I want to get through as many as we can. So aside from being a BPO group and doing related activities, KMC sets up teams for companies abroad to develop tech products. Is this correct? Yes, it can be. Absolutely. Aside from this, do you provide physical spaces for companies who need physical space? Yes, it's always been a la carte. So we've always, we have some clients who use us for the whole kit and caboodle, as I call it, which is, the staffing, the space, the technology, the bandwidth, the IT support, et cetera. And then there are some companies that they just want an office. So they've actually potentially registered their entity here, or they're a startup here in the Philippines. We have a lot of domestic companies using us, for example, in that startup space. So it's all very much a la carte. If you just need the office, that's absolutely fine as well. 2 more minutes. I think I've got everything. No, hang on. There's a couple more in Q&A. Oh, can you send us a copy of today's webinar? Yes. So we'll publish this. We've been recording. I probably should have told you that before, Chris, but we've been recording, and we'll circulate this. So I guess they'll probably upload it on our YouTube channel or on the website, and we'll make sure this is circulated to everybody. And feel free to reach out if you want to have more of a one-on-one conversation. It can be very, very introductory. It tends to start that way anyway. So if you're just looking for some sort of initial first advice, you've got me, Sarah, you've got Chris Nelson from the Chamber. Feel free to reach out and we'll sort of point you in the right direction. If I have a listing of office properties, will KMC assist in looking for clients? Yes, it's not impossible actually. We sometimes find ourselves in a situation where we don't have enough desks to support the requirements in a certain location. We typically run at very, very good occupancy rates. So not impossible that we could pass some clients your way, and hopefully vice versa. We're more than happy to explore that as well. I've just run out of time. So guys, thank you so much. Chris, Sarah, thank you again for taking part today, and for everybody that joined our call. I saw it creep up to around 100 participants. So particularly for those in the UK,
Tom?
you know, to log in 9 a.m. on a Friday, very impressive. Go on, Chris.
Yeah, just say thanks very much, and thank you to KMC for hosting this, and to all the people who're watching. As I said, if the British Chamber can assist in any way in terms of their business opportunities, we're happy to do so. And thanks again for the opportunity. I'm wishing everybody a good and safe weekend.
That's right. You've got to sign off these days with stay safe. So stay safe, everybody. And I'll close this down now. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank
Cheers.
you, Tom. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
See ya.